unmute myself. Turn you to a reasonable volume. Say something.
Hello.
Okay. Say hello again.
Hello.
Okay. I realized I wanted you to say something so that I could check and make sure the levels were okay, and then I wasn't looking at the levels. So,
I'm muting it from the stream. Otherwise, I was hearing an echo.
right. Yeah, yeah. I usually don't even let the stream run. I look to make sure that it's working okay, and then I'll pause it so that I don't use up any extra bandwidth. But I keep it open so I can keep up with the chat.
Yeah.
So, hello, anybody who's watching, which may not be anybody live yet, but this will be up on YouTube someday. So,
Yeah.
who knows? Thousands and thousands of viewers, millions, millions, billions of viewers.
Well, I,
The Tome Show's video feeds will someday be required viewing for all school children across the world.
a friend Daniel Kwan, when he did his Dungeons and Asians for Gen Con
Mm.
live, they got over 5,000 viewers.
Wow, nice,
It's just like Asian
it's
representative.
amazing, yeah.
Cool.
No, I'm fully anticipating that someday the Tome Show Book Club will be like the real world version of like Bill and Ted, right? You know, Wild Stallions goes on to bring world peace through their art.
A noble goal.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Is we're gonna bring world peace to the world through
A book at a time.
our podcast recording and our book club discussions.
Yeah. Book at a time.
Yeah, that's right, one book at a time. So I need to go back through the script. We have been discussing before we started the stream. We were discussing what our next book was going to be. So we were thinking to read something by N.K. Jemisin because I've been seeing her all over the place and I've never read anything from her. And so Eric's read a couple things and liked one of them better than the other, so we're going to start with that series, I think, unless anybody in the chat watching us has any particularly strong feelings on which N.K. Jemisin series is for the best. So, and there are people there now, so, or that might be you. No,
That
there's
is
another,
me.
there's another viewer in there too. So
Yeah.
you see, you got yourself the little diamond in the chat.
Pardon?
I on the Twitch chat.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that there's a diamond. I don't know.
Yeah, I figured out how to set roles,
Oh.
and I've made you a VIP.
Ooh.
So that's what your little diamond is for.
Ah.
Yes.
So,
So we're gonna extra confuse people with this recording because it is. I mean, we are well into August at this point, and we are recording the July book club discussion.
yes.
Because literally, like the day that we were supposed to record, my computer died. And then it took a week or so to get a new one. And then it took me another week or so to get it set up. And then I tested it on behind the DM screen last week. Let them be the guinea pigs to see if I had it all set up right for streaming and recording and all that. And it seemed like it worked okay. So here we are.
The Bioengineering scheme seemed to be a good guinea pig. I mean, I'm sure that Mike Shea was great for that.
Right, exactly. Well, he's the one who originally convinced me to start streaming to begin with. So I figured if there were issues, he could help me figure it out. And
Yeah.
if he couldn't, it's not like behind the DM screen's a good show. So whatever.
I enjoy listening to you folks discuss your tips
I it's
and your issues.
I say that facetiously, of course, because behind the DM screen is by far our most popular show, based on number of downloads. So, all right, well, I've got my script ready to go. Oh, I never put in the new book. What did we decide? Killing Moon?
Wait, what's that? Killing Moon.
Is it just Killing Moon or The Killing Moon?
I believe it's The Killing Moon, but I will confirm for
The
you.
Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin.
Yeah, it is The Killing Moon.
Nice. All right, and then I'll add that at the end as well. N.K. Jemisin.
I had to recheck a summary first before tonight just to make sure that I remember the book because
it's been a minute.
I've read the whole series in the past. I'm like, is this part of that series of the book or is it later?
Oh. I suppose.
Because I finished rereading recently. So
well, right, we finished. We both, I think, were finishing rereading like the day that we were supposed to discuss.
Yeah,
but that was 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
So I'll be lucky how much I remember. We'll see.
Yeah.
Luckily, I don't have the problem of mixing it all up because I have never read it before. So.
Yeah. The Dark Sun Wiki has a good summary for it. Nice. So.
It occurred to me. In fact, I included it in the Tome Show's tweet about a half an hour ago that we should really be reaching out to Robert Aducci about joining us for when we come to Dark Sun, because I know he's a big Dark Sun fan. I'm sure he would, if he has the time to do so, would love to join us for the conversation. So, alrighty, shall we get started?
Pardon?
Shall we get started?
Sure.
I'm sure the handful of viewers are eager to hear us stop prattling on. So let me hit record on the audio, and that is going. Say something.
Bonjour, comment ça va?
There you go. I just wanted to check the levels, make sure we're good there. Yep. And we are. So let's get started. This episode of the Tome Show is brought to you by Skull Splitter Dice, sponsoring a Tome Show listener contest. Be sure to enter to win. It's also brought to you by listeners like you. Thanks for using the Tomes, Amazon, and DM's Guild affiliate links, and to our wonderful patrons over at patreon.com/The Tome Show. Welcome to the Tome Book Club for technically July of 2020. The Tome is a D&D news, reviews, and interviews show, and I'm your Tome host, Jeff Greiner. In each book club episode, we discuss one D&D related book, spoilers be damned, in full book club style. And our book this time around is The Crimson Legion by Troy Denning. The next episode, which will be coming in September, end of September, we will be reading The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. With me, as always, is Eric Paquette. Welcome back, Eric.
Good to be back, as usual.
Yeah. We've got two book clubs in a row without Tracy, but I think there's good reason for that. She just bought a house. In fact, I think last time we recorded, they were just working on the purchasing of housing, and now they've just bought a house and they've moved. Or in the process of moving and what have you. So I get that she doesn't have a ton of extra free time around to read books. So
it's a big thing, you hope, but it's a good thing.
It's a big thing. It's a good thing, but it means that we are podcasting without supervision again.
Going wild.
What trouble are we going to get into? Two wild and crazy guys like us. We're actually, I think I mentioned before we started streaming or recording that we're recording on what was my first day of school. So I am in many ways exhausted. But oftentimes I find that doing these podcasts actually energizes me and picks me up a little bit. So that'll be good for me, probably.
I will try to make sure to get you entertained and energized.
Right. Very good. Okay, so I should mention to our listeners that we have been, as I alluded to recently, streaming many of our Tome Show recordings at twitch.tv/Tome Show. So if you wanted to watch how the sausage gets made, or in this case, I think we chit chatted about what our next book was going to be for like 8 minutes before we started recording. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you can always come and watch us live that way. The easiest way to get notified is to either follow us on Twitch or follow us on Twitter, where I always tweet it out. Everything we stream eventually gets edited and released on the podcast. And if you miss the stream but want to watch the video, I usually post it on YouTube later on as well. So you can find the Tome Show there. It's also worth noting that we are running a contest right now, which is another reason that you might want to go and follow us on Twitch. The contest is sponsored by Skull Splitter Dice. They are providing some really fantastic bundles over a 4-month period, and we're currently in the middle of bundle number 3, month 3 of giving away. We gave away based on people on Twitter. We gave away to people based on Facebook. And this month, this bundle, which is actually a really nice bundle with several sets of metal dice and a nice little tray that folds up, and I'm kind of jealous at whoever wins this one. Not that I haven't been jealous before, but this one stands out to me as being particularly cool. If you want to have a chance to be entered to win this month, and this month is August, because I don't know when you're listening to this in podcast land, you need to follow the Tome Show on Discord or join the Discord server in order to be entered to win. You can email us at thetomeshow at gmail.com. You can tweet us. You can send us a message on Facebook. We try not to be hard to get a hold of. Reach out to us. Get the link to join the Discord server and join that server to chat with some of our wonderful Tome Show hosts, guests, listeners who are super cool people. It's a pretty good conversation over there.
Yeah.
You're on there fairly regularly as well.
I am on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We even have a competition for leveling.
You are probably on there more often than I am at this point because getting the school year started has been, all consuming for me this year. So, so that's it. That's all the stuff I have to say. Let's get to the book. So we read book 2 of The Prism Pentad by Troy Denning. It's the second book. The Prism Pentad is a very well-known series set in the second edition D&D setting of Dark Sun, which is, or at least it was written during the second edition era. Although Dark Sun they published a version 4th ed. Did they publish a 3rd ed version?
Atlas.org did its own version in 3rd edition.
Yeah, there was like an unofficial version.
Started out in 2nd edition. Yeah, the official one there was no thing that was published officially other than 3rd edition fan stuff that was done. So I believe Ravadushi, who was part of Atlas.org, also was involved with that publication. So.
Right. So it's mostly been a 2nd edition setting. And for those who don't know Dark Sun or didn't listen to our discussion, it must have been probably a year or so ago of the first book. Dark Sun is sort of a post-apocalyptic D&D world where, in 4th edition terms, I actually really liked, if you're familiar with the 4th edition cosmology, the sort of history of existence, right? They always argued that in the beginning there were primordials, these ancient sort of elemental beings that brought existence into creation, but they were basically horrible and destructive, and then the gods came into existence and sort of defeated them in the Dawn War at the beginning of time, right?
Yeah, it's like in Greek gods, the gods and the Titans.
Right, kind of the Greek gods and the Titans, absolutely. One of my favorite explanations of Dark Sun is, well, let's imagine the gods lost, right? That's kind of Dark Sun, right? The primordials, these ancient destructive elemental beings won.
Yeah.
So there are no gods.
it's very much a sword and sorcery sandal type of world, with psionic powers basically being predominant for purposes of everyone has access to, and everything has psychic powers. There's no gods in the world. Elements are the ones who are providing. One character is the Cleric of the Sun, which we'll be able to get to deal more in detail. But basically, the elemental planes are in power, and there's evil sorcerer kings who also grant power to their worshippers, and those are more commonly known as clerics or Templars. But they're the sorts of government, and they tend to be evil or dictators.
Well, yeah, because they're following sorcerer kings who tend to be pretty horrible tyrants, right?
Yeah.
Although it did occur to me in this book as I was reading it that the Templars in particular would translate pretty darn well to 5th edition as warlocks, as a particular warlock build.
Yes.
With the sorcerer king as a patron.
That's the way that 4th edition dealt with Templars. Right. Templars were warlock, and their pact was with the sorcerer king.
Nice, yeah. So that could be cool. So that's kind of Dark Sun in a nutshell. In the first book, to recap, we met Rikus, who is, despite there being sort of a collection of characters, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that Rikus is clearly intended to be the main character. Is that fair?
No. We will see. But the way it's structured for the whole Prison Pentagram, the first book is involving the 3 main characters, which is Rikus, Sadira, and Ages of Assicles. Then the next 3 books, so Crimson Legion focuses on Rikus, Amber Sorceress focuses on Sadira, and the 4th book, which I forget the name right now, the Obsidian Oracle deals with Aegis, and then Silver Storm at the end gets them all back together, and they finish off the main arc of the story of their goals that they're going to.
So it's just because this is the book we most recently read that it occurs to me that Rikus feels like, or Rikus, however you want to pronounce it. The audiobook, I've always said it Rikus, and then the audiobook said Rikus. So now I've gotten in that habit. But the audiobook also said that it was written by Brian Denning, not Troy Denning, and I'm like, that's weird. And then they did it again at the end when they gave the final credits, and I'm like, so it wasn't just a mistake. Like, somebody wrote the script wrong, and they've just kept it for the years that this has been available on Audible, and that's strange. I don't remember them making that mistake in the first book, but I wonder if Troy knows.
I always pronounce it as Rikus because, to me, my mind's like, it's like Eric, but without the E and S. So that's how I pronounced it.
Sure. So. Absolutely. So, and I guess my first exposure to Dark Sun was like my junior high school days. And you look at the cover of the books or whatever, and Rikus is kind of a badass, right? So that's kind of the character that in my head.
Because he is the big badass, the half dwarf,
right?
The mole or the mule character, who is the gladiator that fights in combat. So you have the big warrior, right? So
I guess I always had a particular affinity for him because of that, right? Because I was a teenager and not very mature, and whoever the big badass on the cover was clearly the main person, right? The most interesting person.
But for me,
go ahead.
For me, Dark Sun was my first D&D published setting that I ever got. I remember at Christmas or my birthday, or close enough, that doesn't really matter, that I got it for Christmas. Nice. The box set, the first box
with
set.
Had the cloth map in it?
The cloth map actually came in the second set.
Version, okay.
second set. The first set had a paper, but the second set they expanded the world, but they provided a cloth map of the original map. Nice. They still have it, and it's a beautiful, beautiful map. So
excellent.
It's very thematic.
So we're talking a lot about Dark Sun so far. There's no way we're going to do that better than some other people are already doing it. There's what's the name of it? The Misdirected Mark folks have a Dark Sun specific podcast. Sword, Bone, and Blood or something like that. Anyway, we're not going to discuss Dark Sun better than they do. So if you want to know a lot about Dark Sun, there's a fantastic...
Well, listen to Bone, Stone, and Obsidian.
Bone, Stone, and Obsidian, that's it. Go listen to that because they're going to talk about it way better than we are. But we're going to talk about this specific book.
Well, so yeah, big summary of the first book is the fact we meet our three heroes with their supporting cast. They go off and they kill off their sorcerer king of their city and free all the slaves.
Right, and now there's a new person in charge who's not really a sorcerer king.
No, his head Templar Tithian took over as being king because he knows the city, he knows how to manage the city, and he's also very ambitious.
Right. So, but part of the deal was, in order to get everybody on board, that they made the city of Tyr, which is the name of the city, a free city. So there's no longer any slaves and what have you. Rickus and Sidira and companions sort of gathered together, and then they and took their legion off to go do things that you do with your army, marching around in the desert and taking care of potential enemies and what have you. And that's sort of where this story picks up. Is Rickus and company are out with their legion.
Well, it started a bit beforehand, where basically Tithian is learning dragon magic, which is a bit more powerful form of magic, and then they are hearing, with their scouts, they are hearing that Uric, another city-state, is sending an army to take over Tyr because it's available for the picking, and also the iron mine, the only iron mine that is in the region that's been supplied, is owned by Tyr, and it has not been operated for months because there's no more slaves.
Right.
So
the whole region has been destabilized because of the lack of the iron trade and all of that.
Yeah. Because in Dark Sun, iron is a rare commodity.
Right.
Most weapons and most items will be made of bone or wood or obsidian.
Right. Well, not a lot of wood either because it's a big desert, but.
No.
But bone, stone, and obsidian, right? That's what the name of that podcast was. That's why they called it that.
Bone, stone, obsidian. Those are the bones. But yeah. So they hear that. So Tithian gives the order to have them, because another part of that is that Tithian, being ambitious, originally he realized that if he sends Rickus, Neva, Aegis, and Sidira with the army, not fully prepared, he expects them to die and not live.
Right.
And he can get rid of them and now have full control of the city for himself, rather than always have them over his shoulder.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's part of his sort of ambition, right? Is this is an opportunity for him to maybe get rid of some potential rivals, even if, like, I don't think that Rickus or any of the others, like, ever had a particular thought in their mind that they would challenge.
I think the only one that could potentially think of challenging would be Aegis, because he's nobility and he knows how to rule stuff.
Well, and Aegis wasn't really in this book. Like, there was sort of and this is one of the things that pacing is weird in books, you know?
Yeah.
So there are moments where I'm like, okay, like, move on. You don't need to get into every detail of, in this time period. It's not that important. Get along.
Yeah.
But then we've also run into the last several books that we've read where there's just moments where the author's like, okay, and then let's just skip ahead. We're at this now, and this other thing happened. Don't worry about it, right? And in this case, it was, the Legion went and did its thing, and, Aegis and some others, they just went back to Tyr. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's not important. They're not around anymore. So Aegis and et al., were kind of mentioned as going off with the Legion, and then it was, don't worry about it. They're on their way back to Tyr. And then it was like, hey, they haven't gotten back to Tyr yet. I wonder what happened. And then later it's just like, okay, well, they made it back. It's fine. So there's a lot going on back in Tyr that we're not privy to.
As I said, this book focuses on Rikus, and the other two books will be focusing one on Sidira and one on Aegis,
right,
and what they've been doing. I don't remember if the timeline syncs, but so their stories.
And that would be weird if the timeline synced up, because Sidira is there with Rikus, isn't she?
No, she's not. Neva is.
Oh, okay. So maybe okay.
Sidira is the half-elf sorceress.
Yeah, see, it's been so long since we read the first book that they were thrown the names of these characters a lot of times, and I have very little recollection of who they are, or what's going on with them, or why they were.
But Aegis was the noble mindbender.
Okay, so the psionicist.
The psionicist, yeah. So,
Which you can't have him around, because dealing with another powerful psionicist is kind of the big crux of this whole thing. So if he was around, it might throw a wrench in the plot.
Yes.
So.
And also for Sidira, involving magic would also have been a crutch in the whole plot, too.
Or at the very least, they wouldn't have had to rely on the cleric as much as they did for magic. Like the cleric played a major role in providing the magical. And that's something else this story did, is that it added characters fairly fast and loose in some cases. Like that cleric wasn't so much added fast and loose. Like we were introduced to him and he came along with us, but they threw in a half giant and a Thri-Kreen. Like, oh yeah, we found these guys too. No big deal. Now they're in the group. And the half giant barely plays much of a role plot wise in the story. His role is towards the end. He busts some holes in some walls or whatever, and that's about it, right? The Thri-Kreen shows up a bunch.
Yeah.
I almost feel like they got to this book and the setting book was out, and they realized, oh, there's all these really cool player race options in the setting for the D&D game. We should throw some of them into the books because people like those. So.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, the battle that gets seen early on of defending Tyr from the Urukite army, there is an adventure.
Oh yeah.
The second adventure of Dark Sun is you get in folks and you fight off that battle.
Now, was that the same battle? It's been a while, right? Was that the same battle where they fought off the Urukite army from the Dwarven settlement?
It's a bit before the Dwarven settlement.
Okay.
That battle. Basically, it's the one that basically they believe.
So they fight a battle. Then part of the
it might have been the Dwarven settlement in Kled.
Okay.
But it is.
But then the Aegis and Sidira leave, and then they liberate Kled. Because they had to do it without the help. I remember that was a thing, right?
Yes.
And so they did the whole like infiltrating by pretending to surrender and whatever, and then they basically started. They surrendered, became enslaved, and then became a slave rebellion because they're a bunch of gladiators. They've done this before. They've done slave rebellions.
Yeah. This is literally the tactic of Rikus, because he's been a gladiator all his life. He has not been a military commander or whatever, and now he's stressed to being a military commander. Right. So he does what okay, well, let's rebel and just fight that stuff up. So there's a big story about him trying to maintain command of the army throughout the story.
I was surprised after the liberation of Kled how quickly the reveal came that the world of Dark Sun of Athos didn't used to be so horrible, right? I know the times that I've played in Dark Sun, like that's a big reveal that every group eventually comes to, right? Every group eventually learns, oh no, the world used to be green and lush and everything was great, you know. And so I was surprised that.
We,
Go ahead.
yeah, we've learned about that in the first book. When they go see in the first book, they actually go visit the ancient the halflings in the big jungle, and they learn through that. Like, no, the jungle used to be all across
Right.
the region.
They do, yeah, you're
So,
right. And then again in this book, like it hits really early. You know, they get
yep,
into Cled and they're like, oh, come down into our ruins and the tombs, and we'll show you all these great artifacts that we have, and then give them to you because I don't know, you're cool and you're Rickus.
you saved our city.
You saved our city, and so let us give you our most sacred artifacts,
Precious and religious items. Yes.
which is a little
Yes.
like, well, that went fast. I guess at least Rickus is at least part dwarf, right? So
Yeah. Well, they were about to give the book of Camelot Kings because this was the lost city of Camelot. Camelot. I mean, I don't know. But anyways, they were about to give him, and then the bad guy of Rurik comes in and steals it. So they gave him the other stuff to be able, okay, we need to go get this back.
Right.
And
Yeah, and that's sort of, I mean, you kind of get this backstory with the dwarves, and you where you really find out, oh well, Athos used to be the thing that you learn that where Athos used to be a not strange apocalyptic desert was when you're down in the mausoleum and like here's statues of the great dwarven heroes and kings of yore, and they're traditional fantasy dwarves with big long beards, and even the dwarves of today are look at them. It's like, well, that's gross. Don't they get sand in their hair all the time? So because clearly dwarves have evolved in such a way that they don't grow any hair.
No. Or they shave a lot.
Yeah. They have they're shown in full suits of plate mail armor and all that kind of stuff that doesn't exist in modern day Athos. So, and honestly, like Rickus takes that in stride, surprisingly, like it was no big deal. Maybe because of what happened in the first book. I don't remember, but he, like, as much as it occurs to me that anytime I've played the game, that's supposed to be like a big deal reveal. Rickus doesn't. I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's just dwarves, so they got plate mail, no big deal, right?
Yeah. It's shown. Well, there's part of it over the first book, but also the fact that gladiators are known, and especially Rickus was known to be able to easily to adapt around and accept stuff. He's not the brightest individual of our heroes, and he doesn't try to really understand stuff. He just tends to accept it and move how do I use this?
Right, that's true. He does. So, and they give him a magic belt that it used to belong to one of the kings.
Yes.
And they give him
King Ricard.
And they give him a magic sword that was used to kill that king. Is that right? The Scourge of Ricard?
Oh no, the king used that to kill off Boris of Eve.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the other way around, that it was used to kill the king.
Yeah. Oh, Ricard was the king.
Yes. Right. And then the book is stolen by the big bad leader of the Urikites, who's a powerful psionicist, sneaks in.
Yeah.
What was it?
And previous owner of Rickus.
Right. Swoops in the form of in the form of like a sandstorm or whatever. Steals the book and swoops out.
Sure.
And now they're like, oh well, now we have to chase him down, and of course Rickus is like, well, I'm an adventurer basically. We got to go hunt this down, and I guess I'm in charge of this army, so they got to come too.
Yeah.
and then the dwarves join as well.
And a cleric, Calum, a dwarven sun cleric, comes in,
which is a rarity. Clerics are rare in Dark Sun.
Clerics are rare in Dark Sun. They tend to be elements,
Right.
Sun clerics are even rarer because their sun is actually a para-elemental plane
Mm.
of and one thing that's interesting, Killam is different from what is normally described for sun clerics because when the book Earth, actually I have it here, this book, one of the supplements, which is all about clerics, uh, Earth, Air, Fire, and Water. They actually deal with the four paraelementals. Three of the which is sun, magma, silt, and rain. Those are the four elementals. Three of those tend to focus on trying to destroy rather than save atoms, which is sun, silt, and magma. Rain is the only one of those that actually want to help. So those three, so a sun cleric has a tendency to be towards being evil rather than being helpful and good.
Right, and that was not
I
the
would say
case.
Callum is probably more of a towards a neutral bent. That's neutral, maybe good. That's I would say. But being a dwarves in Dark Sun establishes themselves and have a focus, a goal in life. That and if they do not, if they die ignoring that goal, they become a banshee, an undead banshee.
And this cleric sets his focus on the protection of was it Neva? Is that her name?
Yes.
Which also was one of those things where well that happened fast. Like this dwarf like takes this really big deal idea of a focus and like sets it on this person he's just met. That
Yeah.
was quick and reckless, but okay. The Legion then marches after the Urukite army. They get to a valley they have to get through. The valley's being guarded by a band, a civilization almost, of escaped slaves that are being led by some
Yeah.
giant mutant desert creature that gained ascensions, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
They try to negotiate to go past.
mm-hmm.
They're not too sure until uh, Rickus had taken from one of the Templars a communications crystal and were to be able to speak to Tithian.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "Well, here, speak to my king, and they will he will be able to negotiate and give you a deal and all that." Which Tithian quickly betrays Rickus.
Oh yeah. Tithian was very quickly like, "Yes, cool, we got a deal, but do me a favor, kill this guy for me, right? Get Rickus out of my way." And Rickus also very quickly like, "Okay, well, so I guess you got a deal. Ha, stab!" Right? I mean, Rickus didn't have any plan on actually making good on any deal that Tithian made. He was always going to betray the deal and kill the guy anyway.
Yeah, the leader killed off. The tribe does not follow the Legion as Rickus wanted, but they do let them pass.
Right. So they get past. They
Because,
get through the. They get through the valley or past the freed slave folks.
yeah.
There's another battle with the Urukites, and this time a shadow giant that has been
Yes, Umbra.
that has been hired by or conscripted by
Summoned from the black.
yes
Yeah.
by the Urukite guy whose name now escapes me.
Metan.
There you go. What he said. And so they end up fighting this shadow giant, which are apparently like really powerful magic creatures in Dark Sun, or at least this one was.
Well, giants in general in Dark Sun are very, very powerful. All of their strengths in second edition stats their strength was at 25,
right.
Which in second edition was the highest you could go. So
there you go.
So
there was a big fight there, and Rickus ends up kind of fighting him and doing some damage, like took off a hand or whatever. and then but Rickus basically loses that fight, as I recall. But then wakes up in a tomb, has been saved by some spirits that dragged him down into a tomb.
Well, basically, Caleb teleports the group away.
Okay.
Well, the three of them. It's just Caleb, Kakrik, the Tri Queen that they rescued,
Right.
and basically, and Rickus, and the rest of the Legion basically dies at Umbra's hand. So Umbra retreats back to Mayton, and at a citadel that they were,
Right.
and which is at that point. Yeah, which is that point the bad guys realize that the Citadel has race in there, so dead. But and Rickus heads to the Citadel, enters because he has the sword,
Right.
and fights off again Umbra.
Right.
But that is the Wraiths got in their mind that he is Boris Habib.
Right. Well, yeah. So that's where, at least in my read of the thing, where he basically lost that fight against Umbra, but then was saved by these spirits.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's saved by these spirits, the spirits who are convinced that he's this great hero, Boris, who it turned out it took me a chapter or two before I remembered. I know that name from somewhere. Oh, now I know where this is going, right? Yeah. So I remembered the name of Boris, and they definitely foreshadowed it throughout this book. Yes. Because they talk about the entity that would be Boris several times without naming it as Boris. And so the Wraiths are like, well, they were eventually convinced, okay, you're not Boris, so where is Boris? What happened to him? He was supposed to come back to us when he died. So he's not here. He must not be dead. What happened to him? That book that you're hunting would probably know. You need to go get the book and give it to us so we can figure out what happened to our great leader, Boris. And one of the Wraiths embeds a gem into Rickus's chest so that this Wraith, this spirit, is sort of in his head at all times, right? And can take him over if it needs to. And that freaks everybody out when the Legion and the other people eventually find out about it, because that's weird dark magic that you've got embedded in your chest.
Yeah, exactly.
But it actually takes a while. So he makes that deal. Okay, I'll get you the book. He doesn't really intend on following through with it, but they're like, yeah, but when the time comes, we can force him to do it. Yeah. Because he already promised to get the book for the dwarves. Yeah. And so then it's like several chapters of him trying to catch up to his army, right? The army waited for him for several days. He didn't show up. They had to assume he was dead, and they moved on. Yeah,
the Templars were very quick to take over the army and say, no, we have to continue.
Yep. So eventually he catches up to them, but do I remember right that by the time he caught up to him, they'd already liberated the town? There was some town that had water.
They had kept, and I don't think they had reclaimed the town. They were close to it, but
there was that thing where he walked into the town and the Templars had taken over, and that one, I forget his name, the lead Templar had set up his little throne inside of the town, and they were drinking the wine and all of that kind of stuff. And
okay, so yeah. I do remember him coming back, and basically Templars had been in charge. I thought it was a camp.
Oh, you know what? This was another thing that was weird. He did come back and find them in the camp, but he was on death's door. So they once again just left him in a tent in the desert and attacked the town. So when he finally came to and was healthy enough, that's when he found them. So that was weird. They thought he was dead, so they left him. Then they found out he was alive, but he was sick, so they just abandoned him again. Like, you couldn't at least bring him along? Like, jeez.
Well, it just shows how callous that the Templars are. I mean, for most and probably all of the Templars that are there, that person, Rickus, was a unruly slave who killed their old boss.
Yeah, but those weren't the only people there, right?
No.
Neva was there. Why didn't she set up
Yeah.
that half giant buddy was there that could have easily just tossed him over his shoulder and carried him, right? It seems astounding that they left him behind, but they did. He found them in town. They'd already won. It was way too easy because, of course, it was all a ruse, right? Rickus basically retakes command, shames the Templar, takes over the Legion again, and then quickly discovers they let you take this town over. This is a trap. Don't drink the wine. It's probably poisoned. They just left it out for us to find. And by being in town now we're trapped in this place and we can't get out and they've got us surrounded. And so they tried to flee really fast and then got trapped in this, arguably worse spot. That was like this valley or this canyon full of bones that they were trapped in.
Yeah, critter bones. So.
And meanwhile, there's this growing sort of conflict between Rickus and Neva, because Neva's got this connection to the dwarf, but Rickus doesn't really trust the dwarf, and he can't tell Neva about what the weird gem thing is in his chest because it's all being kept a secret, and he knows that if he does something to piss off the spirit, it'll take him over and use him to kill Neva.
From what I recall too, the spirit, the spirit inside was also influencing him and putting doubts up because he said, "Oh, there's someone who's a traitor among your midst," and all that. Right. Who is it? Is it a dwarf? Because the spirit doesn't want the dwarf to get back the book because it wants the book. So there was that triangle conflict there.
Absolutely. Well, and it reads in such a way that you're not sure that that's what's going on. You just know that Rickus is really suspicious of this dwarf. And then by the end, it becomes very clear that he was thinking that and thinking that way because he was being manipulated by the spirit. Like, sometimes it's obvious that the spirit is manipulating him, and sometimes it's like, well, he just seems to be really suspicious, and he seems to be doing that on his own right now. But it turns out he really wasn't.
There's also an aspect of Rickus that I always get the feeling that he was attracted to Neva, so he was also seen kill him as a rival for Neva's affection.
They were outright together at the beginning of the story, weren't they?
They pretty much were.
I get the impression they were basically...
They slept together several times. Yeah. Part of it, me, was friends with benefits, but maybe...
But there was this...
I think that's what Neva was thinking, but Rickus maybe was not thinking that way, so...
Well, and there was this very clear, angle towards a building of a longer relationship over time, part of their connection, that then got torn to shreds over the gem and him not being willing to talk about what it was.
Yeah.
Of course, he wasn't willing to talk about what it was because the one time he kind of got close, the spirit took over his body and injured her. In fact, I think that's when he was abandoned. So I guess that's why she agreed to abandon him, because last time he was with her, he almost killed her.
Yeah.
So
killed her, right? And Kalen was like, no, he's too dangerous and all that. So
right. So anyway, now I have to figure out how to get from that point. They then have this big battle in the valley with the bones. And they win in part because our sun cleric brings down a wall of, I don't know, radiant sun or whatever that destroys everybody.
No, it was lava. You redirected lava. You redirected the lava
flow. Okay.
From the nearby volcano called the Smoking Crown.
Yeah, and they were real hesitant to do it because they had already positioned part of their legion in the way. And they knew that it would kill their people too. And then he shared, I can do this thing. And they're like, well, that would have been good to know before we put them right in the middle of the way, right? But now we have it we're probably going to lose them anyway. but I don't want us to be the ones that kill our own people. And so and eventually they have to make the decision to make the sacrifice in order to save the rest of the Legion. But then the book still hasn't been found, right? And they end up. Do they end up all the way in Uruk, the city state?
Well, first things first. The Maiden surrenders to Rikus, right. Basically, and basically hands over a message to Rikus from his king Hamanu.
Yes,
the king of host, and which basically these are the terms of the war. These are the terms to stop the war to get peace, which is basically Tyr restarts the iron trade, and the Gladiator Legion is gifted to Uruk as slaves.
Right. And of course, Rikus is not too keen on the idea of going back into slavery, along with all the gladiators that he helped free that are with him in the Legion. And so Rikus comes up with this brilliant plan of, well, what's that?
First things first, he actually speaks to Tithien about it, and Tithien is all fine with this plan.
Tithien's fine with the plan. And there was also this element of from Hamanu about, Tithien and his free state and all the freed slaves and all that's all fine and good for now, but when the dragon shows up and decides that it wants its tithing, he's going to learn otherwise. And everybody's like, wait, what? Dragon? What are you talking about?
That's actually later in the book when he
confronts him?
When he actually confronts him and when they're fighting, that's where he gets revealed. But right now, in the book,
Absolutely. Okay, yeah.
He speaks to Tithien. Tithien says, I accept the plan. Rikus just go, no, we're not accepting the plan.
Right, no.
Because I'm here, I'm making a decision.
Absolutely. And Rikus comes up with his own brilliant plan. And I guess it's born of the arrogance that he's kind of pulled this off once before, which is, fine, I'm just going to go into the city-state and kill the Sorcerer King. Like, I killed the last one. I killed Kalak, I might as well kill Hamanu.
Well, part of that plan, too, was because because since Hamanu expected this response from Rikus, what Hamanu did is Hamanu sent out his army to surround Uruk, so that way, and cutting off any means of escape for the Gladiator army. So the only way that Rikus sees that they can go to Nu is if they go to Uruk.
Right, yeah. So he takes the army and they attack Hamanu, and they try to start a slave rebellion within Hamanu, or they do start a slave rebellion within Hamanu eventually.
Yep.
And Rikus is like, okay, you guys keep him busy. I'm going after the Sorcerer King. Gets there. Hamanu fairly readily shuts Rikus down using his psionics. Basically just leaves him, more or less comatose. And then shape changes into this what was it, some sort of dragon creature, and then goes out and enjoys the battle and starts.
It's actually a lion.
The lion, right? Yeah. So it turns into this lion creature and runs out and joins the battle and starts destroying people. Rikus is, and that's when he talks about Tithien's going to be surprised when he finds out about the dragon.
Yeah, which we also find out that actually is that. No, it's later when they got the book. Because during that time, Neva and Caleb managed to go into Maitan's noble manor, and they go and manage to find the Book of Common Kings, and they also find the house slave, which was translating the book.
Right.
They free him, which. After fighting and basically, and the I believe is when the Rikus makes a deal with the Wraith to be able to help out for the fight off and survive the battle versus Hamanu. and Hamanu leaves Rikus because doesn't care anymore
Right.
about it. Almost.
Defeating Rikus was never really that important to Hamanu.
No,
Hamanu's at a power level that Rikus it doesn't really come up to.
it doesn't. It's like, and at that point, the slave rebellion has started in Uruk, so Hamanu has to deal with that,
Right.
which is to him is much more important than dealing with Rikus.
Right. Well, and there's a degree to which I look at this as a DM, and I'm like, okay, so the first adventure, the first sort of arc of this story, I wanted to have a really big impact, so I had them kill a sorcerer king and deal with the repercussions of that. In the second arc, I got to make a point. Like, sorcerer kings are not to be screwed with, you know. And while it was a bit of a Deus ex machina that allowed you to kill Kalak in the last story arc, like. Let's not get in our head that this is a thing you're going to do is just run from city state to city state killing all the sorcerer kings.
And also, like in the first book, there was 3 heroes with a distinct plan, attacking on 3 different fronts, including some artifacts.
Right, including an artifact that was like specifically designed to do this thing.
Yeah,
that they don't have anymore.
You don't have anymore, no. So the only thing that they have left is the staff, which, well, that's back in tier because Sadira is the one who has it, and she.
Well, and all of that was sort of a Deus ex machina anyway. Like if I was running that battle against Kalak in an actual D&D game without the Deus ex machina of like if you accomplish these tasks you just win, and you had to fight him, stats to stats. Like, I still don't know that those heroes win that in that story.
I have Kalak's second edition stats, the books, and which also includes his stats in the book where he's mid transformation, and I remember they were challenging fights, but that was previous book. This book, I also have Urix. I also have Hamnu stats,
Sure.
Yeah, no, you don't in second edition stats. No, you don't mess with Hamanu. He will rip you a new one.
So eventually, so Hamanu just has higher priorities than Rikus. He's just not that important. He doesn't measure up, and so Rikus manages to basically, take his people and run and get out of there, right?
Yeah.
But I forget in the process the book is destroyed. I forget how the book was destroyed.
No, basically, it comes to a head. Basically, Rikus had made a deal with the Wraiths to say that basically, if they get the book, Neva lives.
Right. So he gives up the book.
He tells that to kill him, that in order to save Neva's life, they have to give the book.
Right. Which,
since Caleb had pledged to save her life, he sees that's the only logical choice. But as a recompense, we have that slave who's been translated who memorized the book.
Well, who memorized a couple of stories from the book that he'd gotten to.
Yeah.
And it's one of those situations where it's like, this was a lot of really horrible stuff that happened because a couple of folks couldn't just talk to each other, right? Because the spirits don't need the book. They don't care about the book. They just want to find out what happened to Boris. So let him read the book and then give it back to the dwarves. You could have solved all of this really in 5 minutes,
But undead are known to be really obsessive. I mean, they're so obsessive that they defy life itself.
Yeah, sure. so they make it back to Kled, the dwarven settlement. The slave that they captured or they freed is given the option to stay and chooses to stay with the dwarves and tells the stories as he remembers them, and it's clear that he's become a bit of an unreliable narrator because he gets partway through once. What's that?
the spirit of Ricard shows up
Yes.
and reveals
Yeah,
that.
well, yeah, right. Well, he gets through one of the stories, and he only gets like halfway through, and he's like, nope, nope, I don't remember the rest. I don't got it, right? And so he tells a different story, and then he tells that
Yeah.
story, and this is the story of the dwarf when these ruins were created when the dwarven kingdom fell in battle against the dragon, right? This is another time that the dragon is being mentioned, and so the dwarven kingdom falls in battle against the dragon as King Ricard fights the dragon. And then the spirit of King Ricard, which had kind of been around before, just sort of walking around as a mummy and leaving everybody alone, comes out and speaks for the first time and says, actually, that's not how I remember it. Let me tell you what happened.
Yeah.
Because in the book, what was it? In the book, they said that Ricard killed the dragon, maybe, as I recall.
King Ricard killed Boris.
Okay. Yes. Um,
And,
and then Ricard, the spirit of Ricard, shows up and says, "Actually, that's not what happened."
yeah.
And Rickus has to give back all of his nice dwarven artifacts, the belt and the sword, and
Except the sword.
does he keeps the sword? Okay,
He gets to keep the sword. But yeah, basically, it's revealed that Boris retreated and years later became the dragon.
right.
And by sapping the life force for every dwarf in Camelot.
And now is the entity that all of the sorcerer kings are afraid of and pay tithe to, which says something, as we just had a conversation about how badass the sorcerer kings were, and people don't want to challenge them, and then Boris is able to cow them. Boris the dragon is able to cow them into doing what he wants. So
well, the weakest sorcerer king was level 21.
Right.
Level 21 Defiler / Psionicist.
Right.
The dragon is a level 30 Defiler / Psionicist.
Right.
Just
I vaguely remember the plus has the stats of a dragon. Well, the dragon, because in Athos there's just the one. Is that right? Or am I going to find out later that there's more? Okay. Okay. My understanding from
I can tell you, there's a book called Dragon Kings,
okay,
which deals about how the dragons are created, because there is a creation process, because dragons are not born, but they are created.
Right, because that's what Calic was trying to do, was become a dragon, right?
Calic was trying to short circuit the process.
I see.
It's usually as a 10-level process. which you cast a spell every single level, and you want I want to do all of it in one shot, which is what was his plan. Which is another reason why it was helpful in the first book, why he was easily killed off, because he was in the process of something that he was probably going to kill him anyways. Mm-hmm. So there's a question of did you really kill him, or was it because he was about to kill himself, because you're not supposed to use the magic that way?
Right.
That's the question. We don't know, but whatever. People are claiming they kill him. Cool. Right. but yes. So it is a 10-level process. So basically, the dragon up here, Boris, is the first one who ever completed the full process.
That's I kind of remember something about that now. But yeah.
So.
But that's weird.
My opinion is not the most scary one.
But that's weird to me as well, because that highlights the fact that the reality that dragons are not, people are talking about the dragon that the sorcerer kings sort of are cowed by, like nobody's ever heard of this thing before. So it seems weird to me that when the concept of dragons comes up, people like Rickers are like, oh yeah, dragons, I know what that is, moving on, right? that seems to be a frame of reference they have, and I don't understand why they even have that frame of reference of what dragons are.
Well, they know of the dragon. They know that the dragon is a force that comes every few times and asks for sacrifices. Nobody knows why, but they know that.
Okay.
And they're always fearful.
But if they know that, then why would Tithian be surprised that the dragon is going to come and ask for things? If they know that the dragon does that every now and then, why did Hamanu say that Tithian would be surprised?
because he doesn't know that it's actually a specific deal or the reasons why
Yeah.
he doesn't know because he wasn't there.
Okay.
That
If you say, I mean,
it actually
you
gets a bit more revealed later on
you've read
why.
more of it than I
You,
have, so I
you
trust
do
you. But
get it.
that's not how I remember. That wasn't the impression I was given the impression that
Oh,
Tithia
yeah,
just didn't know about the dragon. Like that, it was a secret that the Sorcerer Kings kept because they didn't want people to realize that they were subjected to somebody else.
so that's the thing. I'm trying to remember if it is how publicly known because probably it is not a public known, but I do know that they do have that Kalak and the older ones would grab a bunch of slaves and bring them to
Sure.
somewhere, and the dragon would go there. So that's probably what Hamnu means. That you don't know this, but you're gonna have to deal with
Right.
this
Oh,
type
well,
thing.
and then the dragon's going to be pissed when you don't show up with the sacrifice,
Exactly.
and it's going to come after the city. So, all right, I think we have scoured through this book fairly thoroughly at this point.
Yeah.
Uh,
The only thing that shows is that Neva when Rickus wanted to return home, he asked for Neva to come home, and she decided to stay and
right,
collect
with the
with
dwarves.
Caleb.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's interesting. Like I, the series is iconic enough, and there's enough going on there that I kind of want to keep going. I kind of want to see what happens next. But if it wasn't for that background, if it was just based on this book, I don't know. Like it was fine, but it didn't really drive
Yeah.
me to like it wasn't great. And there were weird pacing
Yeah.
things where things just sort of happened, and Rickus's tendency to just be like, oh well, this is really strange and unusual, and I should be freaked out by this, but whatever.
Yeah.
That's a little bit off-putting because I can't. We as the reader can't see ourselves in that situation, or we don't. It's hard for me to recognize, like, is this supposed to be shocking and Rickus just accepts it, or is this not supposed to be shocking and that's why Rickus is just accepting it, right? um,
Yeah.
so and that's kind of makes it kind of weird to try to interpret all of the big reveals because they don't seem like big reveals to him. He doesn't care.
Yeah,
So
exactly. That's like, honestly, I'm not a big fan of Rickus as a character. I always find him like a bit blasé and
mhm.
a bit like, okay, you just accept stuff and he doesn't process the
Right.
information. He doesn't. You will tell him something. He already has his mind set on something. You will suppose it will waft by him, and then he will continue what he had planned
Right.
already. He doesn't seem to listen really. And he struggles with that in
Right.
this book. You do see stuff he's done, and he gets surprised and all that, but he does learn.
Right. Well, and this
But
book also threw a lot of characters that I feel like weren't like fully baked. The half giant, even Kikrik to a certain degree. Like they've kind of got a shtick, they got a gimmick, but they don't really have a personality. Which I guess is kind of the half giant shtick, right? It's that they don't really have a personality; they just borrow from other people. Um,
yeah,
but still, like you introduce these new characters, and they don't really hook you much at all. You don't get much information about them. They don't grow. And then the fact,
the only character that really grew was Caleb the dwarf, Sinclair.
well, and arguably Rickus has, or at least he at least had a journey, right, where he kind of,
Well, all the new characters in
oh, the new characters, yes. And then there's the fact that, so far as I can recall, there's only like one female character that even gets any screen time. In the case of
Yep.
Neva, like every other like screen time named character is male, and
Yep.
for reasons that seem completely like their maleness seems completely unnecessary. Like they could have been female and it would have been
Yeah.
the exact same story. Um, so
Yeah.
why not allow some of that representation to leak in as well? So
Yeah. Yeah. And there's several instances I found that when reading it, it was like, wow, okay, you really just, for some reason, decided to sexualize a lot of Neva's just her appearance
mm.
was really focused on it. And like, is this really
Well,
necessary
and there
right
was
now?
there was
It's like,
a very it was sort of all off camera, but there was a very sort of sexual relationship there for part of the book anyway.
Oh yeah.
And so, and you get the impression that Rickus's primary driver in that relationship was the sexual part of the relationship. Whereas she was interested in maybe a relationship he wasn't, and since it was told from his point of view, I guess you could see how she would become unnecessarily sexualized. But that doesn't necessarily excuse the fact that that it was overly done necessarily, or that there wasn't anybody female in the story that wasn't sexualized, because she was the only female character in the story. So
and part of her mindset of her wanting a more stable and more relationship is the fact that half dwarves are sterile from the beginning. They cannot produce, and all that's what. Since she wants that, it just made sense that she would go to kill him.
There was another named female character, the Spirit.
Tamar was
the spirit that possessed Rickus was female as well. So.
Rickus. Okay. So two. I do not remember that favorite was female, because when I read it, to me, I did not apply a gender to it. It was just a spirit, and it was like
there was a scene or two wherein they were like in his mind's eye, and she was scantily clad or completely nude, and being described in that way. So yeah. So, but again, sexualized whenever she was pictured with physical form. So, all right.
Yeah. Because technically, I mean, if you look at the cover, other than his armor, Rickus is not. So that's one of the part of Dark Sun.
Dark Sun involves being scantily clad, so that is definitely a part of Dark Sun.
Dark Sun.
I mean, and if I had to wear clothes that were made out of woven giant hair, maybe I wouldn't wear very many clothes either. So. So, all right. I think that's the end of our episode talking about this book. It's time to say goodbye, and we want to say thank you to some folks. First of all, we want to say thank you to Skull Splitter Dice. If you go to skullsplitterdice.com/Tome Show, you will find a coupon code there worth 15% off of your first purchase from them. We also want to thank our patrons at patreon.com/The Show. Is that right? I think it's just patreon.com/thetome. I should fix that. And we also want to thank those of you who shop at Amazon and DM's Guild using our affiliate links at thetomeshow.com. That address I know is right. We want to thank all the folks or the handful of folks this time around who joined us in the Twitch stream. So I'm glad that you were able to join us. We did kind of announce this one last minute. So sorry about the lack of much notice this time around. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email thetomeshow@gmail.com. You can call the biz line at 919-BIZ-TOME. That might still work. I haven't checked it in a while, or I haven't gotten an alert in a while that anybody's called. If you want to tweet Tracy, even though she wasn't on this episode, she is at Sarah Dark Magic on Twitter, and her website is sarahdarkmagic.com. You can tweet me. I am at Squatch, SQUACH. You can tweet Eric. He is at Eric with a C, M, and Pack, P-A-Q. You can also tweet the show. It is at The Tome Show, although less and less, but mostly that's still me. Some other folks help manage that too. So you can watch the stream of episode recordings at twitch.tv/Tome Show, or you can watch the video after the fact on the Tome Show's YouTube channel. Show notes and other great shows will be available at thetomeshow.com, and that's our thoughts on the Crimson Legion. Next up, I am looking forward to digging into, in September, The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. This is a not D&D specific book. This is by an author that I've heard a lot about, but I've never read. And it's also written, I think, with a little bit more modern sensibilities. She wrote all of her books, I think, more recently in the 2000s, if I remember right. So So I'm looking forward to switching gears out of like 80s style D&D books, which is what we've done lately, into something else.
80s and 90s.
Yeah, right. All right, so that's the end. Until we get to September, then you need to keep turning the page, Tomites, and reading our book club books. The end of the recording.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll also turn off the stream here in a minute, so say goodbye to our viewer in the stream.
Thank you for coming.
And that's gone.